My name is Richard. I am 41 years old. I am married. My wife's name is Alicia. She is 36 years old. We have been married for 9 years. For most of those 9 years, I believed I understood my life. We did not have children, not because we didn't try, but because sometimes life makes quiet decisions for you. Still, I thought we were okay. The kind of couple who paid bills on time, who ate dinner at the table, who went to bed without shouting, until the day I saw a bank transfer that changed everything. It was a Sunday afternoon. I was sitting at the table with my laptop paying bills. I clicked through our bank statements. Then I noticed a recurring payment, $850 every month for 10 months. The name attached to it was not familiar. L. Thompson. Maybe it was fraud, maybe a mistake, but the account was ours. My heart began to beat fast. I scrolled back through the months. January, February, March, the same amount, the same name, $850, money I had never noticed missing. When Alicia walked into the kitchen, I turned the laptop toward her. I said, "Who is L. Thompson?" Alicia froze. She said, "It's nothing, just helping someone out." I said, $850 a month? Alicia nodded. She said, "It's for a friend." I said, "A friend? What friend?" Alicia looked away toward the window. She said, "Someone from work." Alicia is not a good liar. When she lies, her hands move too much. She avoids eye contact. She was doing all two. I said, "How long?" Alicia said, "Not long." I turned the screen back to her. I said, "It's been 10 months, Alicia. Why didn't you tell me?" She said, "I didn't think it was important." I said, $850 every month. Not important? Alicia said nothing. I realized the woman I shared a bed with had been hiding something for nearly a year. For 2 weeks, I said nothing. I watched. Alicia began acting strange. She took calls in the hallway. She smiled at messages and turned the screen away. One Wednesday, Alicia told me she was working late. I left work early and I followed her. I am not proud of that, but doubt makes you do things you never thought you would. Alicia did not drive to her office. She drove 20 minutes outside the city to a small town. She parked in front of a small house. I stayed inside my car, watching. A woman opened the door. She was around 30 years old. She looked tired. And beside her, a little boy, maybe 7 years old. Alicia stepped out of the car and knelt in front of him. She hugged him warmly, like she knew him, like she cared. The boy smiled at her and said something I could not hear. Alicia laughed. His eyes looked like mine, the same shape, the same color. Even from a distance, I could see it. I drove home before she left. My hands shook on the steering wheel. I thought, was that my child? That night, Alicia cooked dinner like nothing had happened. I thought I knew this woman. Now I wondered who she really was. We ate in silence. She asked about my day. I gave short answers. Alicia did not notice, Or maybe she did and chose not to ask. 3 days later, I could not hold it anymore. We were in the bedroom. Alicia had just come out of the shower. I said, "I followed you." Alicia stopped walking. She said, "What?" I said, "I saw the house. I saw the woman. I saw the boy." Her face turned white. Tears filled her eyes. Then I asked the question that had been burning inside me. I said, "Is he mine?" Alicia looked at me. She said, "Richard, no." I said, "Then why does he look like me?" Alicia said, "I didn't know how to tell you." I said, "Tell me what?" Alicia said, "His mother contacted me last year. She said she knew you from before we met." I said, "Before we met?" Alicia asked, "You remember Jessica?" I tried to recall. College, 1 semester, short relationship. We were young and stupid. It ended badly. I haven't spoken to her in 15 years. Alicia said, "She was pregnant. She said she found out after you broke up. She didn't tell you." The world stopped. I said, "What? That's impossible." My legs felt weak. I sat beside her. Alicia said, "She raised him alone. Until last year. She got sick. Stage 3 cancer. She couldn't work anymore. Medical bills piled up. She didn't know how to reach you. She found our website. My name was public. She sent me a message." I stared at Alicia. I said, "So instead of telling me, you decided to secretly send money?" Alicia said, "She showed me DNA results." I froze. I said, "DNA?" Alicia said, "She did a private test years ago using something you left behind. A shirt, hair from a comb, I don't know, but the results were clear." I could not believe what I just heard. I had a 7-year-old son. I said, "Why didn't you tell me?" She cried. She said, "I was afraid that you would leave." I felt hurt. Alicia said, "You didn't cheat Richard. This happened before us. But if you suddenly found out you had a son, what would that do to us, to our marriage, to everything we built?" I said nothing. Alicia said she didn't want money at first. She just wanted you to know, but she was ashamed. And then she got diagnosed. The treatments were expensive. She was going to lose the house. Her son was going to end up in foster care. So I started sending what I could. A week later, I went with Alicia. Jessica opened the door. She looked thinner than I remembered. Chemo had taken her hair. Her skin looked pale. She said, "Hi, Richard." Then the boy stepped forward. Jessica said, "This is Ethan." "Ethan, my son." He looked at and said, "Mom says you're my dad." I knelt down, looked at him properly. He had my nose, my chin. I said, "I didn't know. I'm sorry." Ethan said, "I know. It's okay." As if it was normal, as if father's appearing late was just part of life. Jessica said, "I never wanted to hurt you, Richard. You were about to graduate. You had plans, a future. I didn't want to trap you." I said, "You should have told me." She said, "I know. I was young. I was scared. And then it felt too late. You moved on. You got married. I didn't want to ruin that." That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed thinking about my son. I imagined his first words, his first day of school. Birthdays I never celebrated. I missed everything. Not because I chose to, but because I never knew. The next few weeks I started visiting him. He told me about school, about his friends. He was smart and kind. But at home, things were tense. Alicia tried to act normal, but we were not normal anymore. One night I asked her, "If she hadn't gotten sick, would you have told me?" Alicia said, "Yes, when I felt ready." I felt angry. I said, "You don't get to decide when I become a father." Alicia cried. She said, "You're right." We began sleeping on opposite sides of the bed. We stopped touching each other. One day, Ethan asked me, "Dad, are you going to stay?" I looked at him. I said, "Yes, I'm staying." 2 months later, Jessica's condition worsened. Hospital rooms replaced living rooms. The smell of medicines, the beeping of machines. Ethan visited after school. He held her hand. She smiled weakly. One evening, Jessica held my hand. She said, "Promise me that you will never leave Ethan." I said, "I promise." After she passed, Ethan moved in with us. The house felt different, louder, messier. The first night he slept in the guest room. I felt fear. What if I failed him? What if I didn't know how to be a father? What if I was too late? I went into the bathroom later and cried. Alicia stood behind me that night. She said, "I'm sorry." I said, "I know." We began therapy not because we hated each other, but because secrets change marriages. Healing is slow. Some nights I still feel anger. Some nights she feels guilt. But every morning, when Ethan runs into our room asking for pancakes, something feels right. He sits between us on the couch, argues about what movie to watch, laughs at things, and I think this is what I almost missed. I missed the first 7 years of my son's life, but I will not miss the rest, because sometimes fatherhood does not begin in a hospital room. Sometimes it begins in a living room, when a 7-year-old boy looks at you and says, "Mom says you're my dad," and you decide what kind of man you want to be. And this time, I choose to stay. If you liked this story, please like, comment, share, and subscribe.